Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, and this is my water diviner, Ruud.
Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck you can build without breaking the bank. Now today's deck is going to be about giving a lot of presents no one could ever want. So if it's someone's birthday, you should definitely play this deck.
Absolutely.
As with our decks, there's just one additional build rule, and that is that all cards are under $1 in price, with the exception of our commander though. So let's take a look at the commander.
And we have an awesome commander for you today. We've got Zedruu the Greathearted. For a generic mana, a red, a white, and a blue. So for 4 mana, we get a 2/4 Minotaur Monk with a very unique ability. Now she has that at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to gain X life and X cards, where X is the number of permanents that you own that your opponents control. So basically that means that if the card was in your deck, but somebody else now has control of it, then that counts as a 1 life and 1 card for you. So you're going to say, hey, how are you going to be able to give your stuff to other people? Well, that is the second ability of Zedruu. For a red, a white, and a blue, target opponent gains control of a target permanent you control. That is pretty sweet. So what is going to be the role of the commander? It's going to be to donate useless or harmful gifts to our opponents and gain life and cards for it. So Ruud, what kind of cards do we need to make this deck tick?
First off, we're going to have 20 gifts we can give that are harmful or useless. Then we have 8 protection spells for Zedruu or maybe something else. We have 14 removal spells or permanents. And then we have 17 utility cards and 40 lands.
Exactly. So what would the ideal turn progression be?
On turn 1 we have a free gift. We have 1 card in the deck that applies for this. And then we have turn 2 some ramp card. Turn 3 we will have a trading card to trade something useless with something useful for you. And turn 4 our commander, of course. Turn 5 protection. And from turn 6 onwards we're going to be giving bad gifts to people.
Yeah, and actually it's good to remember that in this deck most things can be given away. So even something like the ramp cards can be given away as well. So most of the deck you'll always have something that you can donate. Even as a last resort, you could donate lands, for example. Even that's also possible. All right, so let's have a look at the first cards, and those are the gifts.
So we divided the gifts into bad gifts. That speaks for itself. We have trading gifts, so you trade something bad for something good. And then we have free gifts, so they give themselves away actually.
Yeah.
Then we have the first one, that is Smoke. For 2 red mana, it's an enchantment. Players cannot untap more than 1 creature during their untap phases. So no one can untap anything. It doesn't matter who controls this enchantment, of course. If you have it, well, nobody can do it. But if you give it away, you will gain life and draw cards for it.
Exactly, so you don't need to keep it. And plus you usually only have Zedruu on the battlefield, so it doesn't really matter because you can still untap Zedruu. So it's pretty sweet. Next card is Pyromancer Swath. For 3 mana, it's an enchantment. States that if an instant sorcery source you control will deal damage to a creature or player, it deals that much damage plus 2 to that creature or player instead. Okay, that part is not relevant. The relevant part of this card is at the beginning of each end step, discard your hand. So this is obviously something that you don't want to keep to yourself. So this is something that you want to play and then give away with Zedruu's ability to make sure that your opponent at the end of their turn will have to discard their hand. That's super nasty. However, in a situation where you would play it and Zedruu would get removed and you do have to discard your hand, it's not so painful for you because you draw cards faster than other people. So having an empty hand is not the end of the world for you.
That's true. But do keep in mind, of course, that you do need to give it away right away. So you'll need 6 mana when you play it, of which 2 red, of course, to give it away with Zedruu right away. And don't forget not give it away to people who have a lot of instant sorceries that deal damage.
Yeah.
Then the next one is Grafted Skullcap. For 4 mana, it's an artifact. It states that during your draw phase, draw an additional card, but at the end of each of your turns, discard your hand. So they do get 2 cards at the beginning of their turn, and they do have to discard their whole hand at end of turn. So you should probably give it to someone who has a lot of cards in their hands most of the time.
Yeah, counts for both of these cards.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But of course we're playing EDH, which means that people are trying to have as many cards as possible, and some people may be even trying to abuse that. So let's get rid of those cards, shall we? Next card we have is Cinder Giant. For 4 mana, it's a 5/3, and during your upkeep, Cinder Giant deals 2 damage to each other creature you control. Once again, it's one of those creatures that doesn't matter if you have it on the battlefield because Zedruu can survive this kind of punishment, but if you give it to the token player on the battlefield, that person's going to be very unhappy because dealing 2 damage to each other creature they control is going to be really hard for them to build up that token army. So it's pretty sweet. They will hit you with a 5/3 probably because they're so angry. But yeah, we're gaining life and drawing cards, so it's not so bad.
The next card, Aggressive Mining, for 4 mana, it's an enchantment, and it states that you can't play lands. And while you can sacrifice a land to draw 2 cards, you can only do that once per turn. But they probably don't want to do that because you do need lands, of course, and this is really, really nasty. If you can't get rid of it, you're really gonna have a problem. You could give it away 1 turn later, then you just draw. You can play 1 land 1 turn maybe, but even if you played it before, you can just get rid of it right away.
Yeah, it's really not a problem to play this one on turn 4, let's say, and then give it away turn 5. Not a problem at all. Maybe even sacrifice a land yourself because you know you're giving it away anyway, so you'll be able to play a land later. Get those 2 cards while you're at it. Next card is Rust Elemental. For 4, we get a 4/4 Flying Elemental. It also says that at the beginning of your upkeep, we sacrifice an artifact other than Rust Elemental. But if you can't, tap this guy and you lose 4 life. Give this to the person who loves playing with artifacts, and every turn they'll be forced to destroy one of them. Of course, once again, they do have a 4/4 thing, which they can use to attack with. They'll probably be attacking, as with the Cinder Giant, other people, as Zedruu is not much of a physical threat on the battlefield. And of course, we're gaining a lot of life, so getting hit with a 4/4 every turn is not the end of the world.
Even if they do not have artifacts, they're going to lose 4 life each turn.
Exactly.
Then we have Embargo. For 4 mana, it's an enchantment, and it states that non-land permanents do not untap during their controller's untap step. So that includes, of course, only all the permanents on the battlefield, except for the lands. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. So that's for the controller. So they lose 2 life.
Yeah.
Nobody untaps their permanents, which is a really big problem for them. Not necessarily for you, because you will most likely only have a Zedruu that has to untap. So
and not even. You just
not even.
So you're actually really sitting pretty with Embargo. This is again one of those really bad gifts you can hold on to yourself and then just give it away later when you also want to make sure somebody else loses life and draw an extra card and gain an extra life. But it doesn't hurt you too much to have it on the battlefield. And then the last one, and that is Trading Post for 4 mana. It's an artifact which allows us to do multiple different things, which is actually really nice in this deck. The main reason why this one's in here is for its second ability, which is pay a generic, tap it, and pay a life, and then put a 0/1 white goat creature token onto the battlefield, because then for 4 mana we can every turn give away something relatively useless to get extra life and draw cards. This card also allows us to do the same, pay a generic mana, tap, and discard a card to gain 4 life, which is actually fine because we're drawing so many cards, gaining a little extra life, not too bad. And we can also tap it, sacrifice a creature to return target artifact from our graveyard to our hand. Not going to be using that one too much. And finally, pay a mana, tap it, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. We're not going to be using that one too much either. But the first 2 are actually pretty useful in this deck. Damn. That actually does it for the bad gifts. Let's see if we can trade our bad stuff for some really good stuff of our opponents.
First one is Political Trickery. For 3 mana, it's a sorcery, and you can choose target land you control and target land an opponent controls, exchange control of those lands. Well, most likely you will have a color you can use from your opponents, and you can give something they can't use. So that's really nice, and of course it's just for Zedruu. You can really it's really helpful.
Yeah, right before, of course, you're actually just mana fixing yourself, and you might be mana screwing your opponent. Same card, but slightly different. Valdak and Plotter. For 3 mana, we get a 1/1 wizard. And when this guy enters the battlefield, it does exactly the same. It exchanges a land of our opponent for one of ours. Very simple, but we also get a nice little 1/1, which we can later also trade, give to somebody else. Good value.
True, good value. Then we have Daring Thief. For 3 mana, it's a 2/3 human rogue, and it has Inspired, which means that it does something when it untaps. And it does the following thing. Whenever it becomes untapped, you may exchange control of target non-land permanent with a permanent your opponent's control that shares a type with it. So that includes lands, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, of course.
Very versatile.
Yeah.
Very versatile. Does have to be able to attack and then untap, but
That's
you know,
true. That's true.
still pretty sweet. Next one is Ledgermane, and that's for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. It states that we permanently exchange control of target artifact or creature for control of target permanent of the same type. So we can say, okay, those artifacts, let's switch those two around, or those creatures, let's trade those around, because now I got your big fat creature and you get my tiny little Voldakan plotter, for example.
True. Very nice. Then we have Perplexing Chimera. For 5 mana, it's a 3/3 Chimera, of course. And it states that whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may exchange control of this creature, Perplexing Chimera, with that spell. So that also means, well, it states under that, you can gain control of a permanent. If that spell becomes a permanent, you will control that permanent. Then, of course, they have Perplexing Chimera, so they can do it again to you or to another opponent of theirs.
Yeah.
But really nice, really nice.
I think it's very strong because, of course, while you took their great spell, because you get to choose when you do it, they're also afraid to cast their best spell, so they're also playing around it. And once you have done it, so you have exchanged Perplexing Chimera for their awesome spell, they have Perplexing Chimera, which of course you own but don't control, so you're also gaining life and drawing a card from that. Then we have Switcheroo for 5 mana. Very simple, just exchange 2 target creatures. Just give away your crappy creature and take that awesome 6/6 flying lifelink trampler.
Exactly. You do need a creature from some stupid useless creature from your trading post or something.
Well, not stupid per se, you know, they're just misunderstood. You know, that's what I see. Those 0/1 goats are just misunderstood.
I agree. Then we have Shifting Loyalties. For 6 mana, it's a sorcery. You can exchange control of 2 target permanents that share a type. Pretty simple.
A little more expensive, but gives you a little bit more freedom.
Also lands, well, it doesn't say non-land, so you can also change lands, exchange lands.
Yeah, we've got a lot of very unfortunate enchantments that we could trade for some very cool, awesome enchantments of our opponents.
Really.
Then we have Djinn of Infinite Deceits for 6 mana. We get a 2/7 flyer. Now this thing blocks for days when you've got this guy on the battlefield. Super strong. Well, actually super big butt. And we can tap it to exchange control of 2 target non-legendary creatures. We can't do it for the commanders of our opponents. That's pretty nice. We can't do this during combat. But other than that, we can do it instant speed. Pretty sweet. We can't take our opponent's commanders, but everything else is fair game. And we can do it every turn. I love that.
Very nice. And I actually like that you can't exchange.
I like that too, yes.
Then we have Glaring Spotlight. For 1 mana as an artifact. And it says that creatures your opponents control with hexproof, they pretty much lose hexproof and can't gain hexproof. And you can also pay 3 mana and sacrifice it, and then creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn and are unblockable until end of turn. So that's very nice. Of course, it's not you don't give this Glaring Spotlight itself, just like with the trading post, but it does make sure that you can exchange stuff that has hexproof.
Yeah.
Which is really helpful in a lot of situations.
Sometimes that can be very annoying when you want to trade that very awesome thing. Then we move on to the free gifts. So these are the gifts that give themselves, starting with Goblin Cadets for 1 red. It is a 2/1 goblin, and then whenever this guy blocks or becomes blocked, target opponent gains control of it. So very simple, just attack with it, and if somebody blocks, okay, fine, now you get it, and now I'm drawing cards and gaining life from that Goblin Cadet. Pretty simple.
Really simple. Then we have Bazaar Trader. For 2 mana, it's a 1/1 goblin, and you can tap it, and then target player gains control of target artifact, creature, or land you control. So you don't get anything back, but you can just give away your bad gifts without paying mana, because Zedruu makes you pay mana, of course, which can be really helpful. And otherwise, it's just there, the Bazaar Trader.
And late game, you can just start giving away excess land. I mean, when you have mana flooded, and it does give you that extra draw power.
True.
So I think that's actually really nice. The 3 saving yourself 3 mana at the beginning of the game as well. Then we go to the last one. That is a Crow and Horse for 4 mana. We get a 0/4 horse defender. And when this guy comes into the battlefield, an opponent gains control of it. So that's right there for free. We don't have to pay anything. Right there, that person's got it. Zedruu is going to be gaining from that. And at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent puts a 1/1 white soldier creature token on the battlefield. So everybody else who didn't get the Crow and Horse is going to be gaining a 1/1 little guy, which of course is handy for us because that's another little 1/1 guy we can give away, which will gain us more cards in life.
True. Well, of course, we don't gain life and draw cards for the 1/1 soldiers because the opponent who gets a Crone Horse, they give those creatures away.
Yeah, but we can
give it away.
To give it away, exactly. All right, those are the gifts. Now let's have a look how we can add a little bit of protection so we can survive until the later points in the game. For the protection cards, we divided into two categories. The ones that protect us from attacks and the ones that protect our commander. Now the first one is Island Sanctuary. For 2 mana, it's an enchantment that states that we get to skip drawing a card. Then until the beginning of your next turn, only creatures with flying or island walk can attack you. We can only do this during a draw phase and only once each turn. So that means that on the turn that we play it, we can't actually use it even if we're going to be drawing cards for some other reason, doesn't matter. But then at the beginning of our next upkeep, when we draw our card, then we can say, hey, you know what, I don't need that first card because I'll be drawing another 4 or 5 cards from Zedruu anyway. You do that every turn and you're basically immune from everything except for flying and island walk, which is pretty sweet.
True. Then we have Power Stone Minefield. For 4 mana, it's an enchantment, and it states that whenever a creature attacks or blocks, this one deals 2 damage to it. So that accounts for everyone, so you can also give it away.
That's right. Why not? Why not have somebody else hold on to it? And on top of that, Zedruu can just attack right through it because it doesn't kill it.
True.
Then we have Light Mine Field for 4 mana. It's an enchantment. It states that whenever one or more creatures attack, Light Mine Field deals damage to each of those creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. So naturally, if there's 2 creatures attacking, they each take 2 damage. You can understand that. Like playing against multiple opponents and people who are playing token strategies, that's going to get out of control real quick. And that's going to make sure that people don't really attack as violently anymore, especially at the beginning of the game. So, and this is also one of the ones that you can just give away.
True. Then we have Sphere of Safety for 5 mana. It's an enchantment again. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each creature, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So you can give this one away. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. And in and of by itself, it does make sure that your opponents need to pay 1 mana per creature that attacks you. And you also gonna have most likely have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 enchantments. So that's gonna be a lot of mana they have to pay.
Exactly. You got a little balance. At the beginning of the game, you may hold on to a couple of those extra enchantments, and then later on, you may think, okay, I'm going to start giving those away to get that draw and life engine going a little bit stronger. But even by itself, it's already nice. People just won't swing in with everything anymore because they won't be able to.
True.
Won't be able to afford it. Then the last one that's going to protect us from attacks is Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs for 5 mana. It is a 5/4 Ogre Warrior, and whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, you get to put a 3/3 Ogre creature token onto the battlefield under your control unless that creature's controller pays 3 mana. Now that is a hefty price to pay. People will mostly just not attack you because they just won't feel like paying 3 mana per creature that they're using to attack you with. So that's pretty sweet.
Then you have the protection spells for our commander. The first one is Gift of Immortality. For 3 mana, it's an enchantment, and you can enchant a creature. When it dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and then later on return Gift of Immortality at end of turn, or at the beginning of the next end step, which is quite the same. What you can do is enchant a creature you control, so enchant Zedruu most likely, and then give Gift of Immortality away. It still stays enchanted on Zedruu, but your opponent controls Gift of Immortality.
Yeah.
Which is not a problem.
That's why it's handy to have maybe tokens or beads or something along with you so that you can put that on Gift of Immortality in this case so people know, even though it's under Zedruu, that they have now taken control of it. You can keep track of how many cards you control. Next card is going to be the same, Indestructibility. For 4 mana, we're going to enchant Zedruu in this case. You can just enchant any permanent you want, and it has Indestructible. So that's a nice one to make sure that Zedruu survives. Also, makes Zedruu a pretty good blocker.
Exactly. Then we have Fool's Demise. For 5 mana, it's an enchantment again, enchant a creature. When the enchanted creature dies, you can return it to the battlefield again. And when Fool's Demise is put into a graveyard, you can put it back into your hand. So it can be a little steep on the casting cost when you have to pay it multiple times, but it's really strong.
Yeah, this one
is really difficult to get rid of.
also, but this is the one you don't want to give your opponent's control over, because then if Zedruu would die, then it would return to the battlefield under their control. You don't want that. But what you can do with this card is you can enchant an opponent's fat creature. Maybe you're going to board wipe, and then it comes back under your control, and you can steal somebody's fat creature with Fool's Demise, which is pretty sweet. That is going to keep us alive for the later game, and of course there's always people doing annoying strategies with creatures and other stuff, so we're going to find a way to stop that with some removal spells.
So we divided the removal spells into counter spells, targeted removal spells, and board wipes. So let's start off with the counter spells. The first one is Dissolve for 3 mana. It's an instant, of course, counter target spell and scry one. So you get to look at the top card of your library and decide if you put it underneath your library or on top.
Counts like half a draw, not bad. Then we've got Counterflux for 3 mana as well. Counterflux can't be countered by spells or abilities, so this is pretty much final say. We're going to counter that, and that's it. True. And we counter a target spell we don't control. We can also overload it for 4 mana, and then we counter everything that's on the stack, but I haven't really used that very often.
No, and maybe in standard or modern it could be used, but I don't think it's going to be used a lot in
no. Just use it as a final say counter spell.
Yeah. Then we have Render Silent for 3 mana. Counter target spell, its controller cannot cast spells anymore this turn.
That's pretty nasty. That's also kind of a final say. Like, we're really stopping at this point. Then we're going to find some targeted removal spells. Now, one thing that's very important for us is that the things that we use to remove stuff, wow, really use very abstract terminology. When we're trying to remove things, it's more important for us to also have a permanent that stays on the battlefield afterwards, so we can give that away, get extra value. So we remove something and we've got something that we can give away. So that's why we're not using that many instant sorceries in this section. All right. First one is Darksteel Mutation for 2 mana. It's an aura, and if we enchant a creature, that creature now becomes a 0/1 insect artifact creature with indestructible but loses all other abilities, which is pretty nasty if you play that on somebody's commander.
Yeah,
you
really
do
nasty. Well, it's not nice, but of course it can be done. Then we have Oblivion Ring for 3 mana. It's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target non-land permanent, and when the Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield in any way, then that player can return the exiled card to its owner's control.
Yeah, and then we got practically the same card, Banishing Light for 3 mana, also comes in, exile non-land permanent. When it leaves, they get it back again.
Yeah. Then we have Faith's Feathers for 4 mana. It's an enchantment aura, and when it enters, you gain 4 life. Could be nice. And it states that enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can be activated unless it's a mana ability.
Yeah. So if they can produce mana, then you can do it. Other than that, and this is actually great because people are using a lot of very powerful artifacts, very cool enchantments that have awesome abilities that are not affected by board wipes or other kind of removal. And these kind of targeted removal spells that we've got do hit those things. So that is pretty awesome. And of course, afterwards we can give them away. Then we've got Suppression Bonds, the last one for 4 mana, enchant non-land permanent. It can't attack or block anymore, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So it shuts down creatures, artifacts, enchantments, whatever you want, pretty much.
Really nice.
Then we move on to the board wipes.
The first one is Mizzium Mortars. For 2 mana, it's a sorcery, and it deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control. That's not really a board wipe, of course, but you can overload it for 6 mana, of which 3 red. It deals 4 damage to all creatures.
Yeah, you don't control, which is a one-sided board wipe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Zedruu would kind of hit the bucket on that one. And then we've got another one where Zedruu also will survive, and that is Divine Reckoning for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature he or she controls and destroys the rest. We can also flashback it for 7, so people also know, crap, they're going to be able to do it again later on at some point. And Zedruu, of course, sitting pretty through all that.
True. Then we have Chain Reaction for 4 mana. This card, it's a sorcery. It deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures in total on the battlefield.
Yeah, nobody's surviving that.
Yeah, so it does kill Zedruu, most likely.
Exactly. Then, let's say if it's to the point where it won't kill Zedruu, then you've got no business casting that spell. Then we got Fell the Mighty for 5 mana. It's a sorcery. Destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. Hey, let's say Zedruu, power 2. Everybody with power 3, 4, 5, everybody's dead.
True. Then we have Planar Outburst. For 5 mana, destroy all non-land creatures. Most likely nobody will have land creatures. And it also has Awaken 4, so you can cast it for more mana, which is 8 in this case. And then you can also awaken a land you control, so you can give it 4+1/+1 counters, and the land is a creature in addition to its land type.
Yeah, so you're pretty much the only person who's going to have a 4/4 creature.
True.
Pretty nice. Then we have Phyrexian Rebirth for 6 mana. It states destroy all creatures, then put a XX colorless horror artifact creature token onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way. Pretty nice. Okay, Zedruu is going to hit the bucket on that one, but we destroy everything and we get a really fat, nice, juicy creature which we can use. This is not too shabby. Those are actually all the removal spells. Now let's have a look at some of the utility spells.
So we divided the utility cards into ramp cards and win conditions. So the first one is a ramp card, Sphere of the Suns. For 2 mana, it's an artifact, and it enters with 3 charge counters on it. It enters tapped actually, and you can, well, the next turn, tap it and remove a charge counter from it, and then you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So you can do this 3 times, of course, and then it's useless, so you can give it away.
Yeah, exactly. Not so useless anymore.
True.
Then we've got Pentad Prism for 2 mana. It's an artifact with Sunburst, so it enters the battlefield with 1 charge counter for each mana color you use to play it, so it'll probably come in with 2. And we get to remove a charge counter from it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So it's actually pretty funny. We can actually play it for 2 and then use those same 2 mana if we want it on something else. Then we've got a useless thing which we can give away.
Yeah. Then we have Mycosynth Wellspring for 2 mana. It's an artifact. When it enters or is put into a graveyard, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it into your hand. Well, it does have to die to do it 2 times, of course, but you can also give it away if you don't really care about it.
Yeah, but don't give it away to somebody who can just sacrifice their own artifacts, because then they'll sacrifice it and gain value from it. Plus, you're not drawing any cards or getting life from it anymore, so you don't want that. Then we have Oreskos Explorer for 2 mana. We get a 2/2 Cat Scout. When this guy enters the battlefield, we get to search our library for X playing cards, where X is the number of players who control more lands than you. We're going to reveal those lands, put them into our hand, and then shuffle our library. So it gives us quite a bit of extra land if we're playing a 4 or 5 player game. And of course, it's just a 2/2 for 2, which we could give away if we wanted to.
Yeah, not really a problem.
No.
Well, of course, our deck does not play land ramp, so we don't put onto the battlefield extra lands. Well, most commander decks do so. So most likely you will gain some planes from it.
Yeah.
Pretty nice. Then we have Pilgrim's Eye for 3 mana. It's a 1/1 flyer, and when it enters, you can search your library for a basic land card and put it into your hand.
Yeah. And once again, this one's perfect to give away, because that 1 damage they'll be doing, attacking you every turn. If they do that, it'll be circumvented with the 1 life you'll be gaining from them controlling it. So it's definitely worth that extra card.
True.
Thought Vessel is next for 2 mana. It's an artifact. It says you have no maximum hand size. Pretty nice when you're actually drawing so many cards every turn. And it taps for a mana as well. This is one of those cards that you're not really going to be giving away.
No, not likely. Then we have Azorius Signet for 2 mana. It's an artifact, and you need to pay 1 mana to gain a white and a blue mana. So it gives you an additional mana, but well, since it's just 2 mana, most of the times these kind of things are 3 mana, so you can use it right away, unless of course you control 3 lands.
Yeah. Then it's actually the same Boros Signet, but then it gives you red and white, and Izzet Signet, but then it gives you blue and red. And these are, of course, these last 4 cards are actually one of the few exceptions in the deck. These are the utility cards we're not really going to be giving away.
No. Then we have the win condition cards. The first one is Angelic Accord for 4 mana. It's an enchantment. Beginning of each end step, if you gained 4 or more life, you get to put down a 4/4 white angel creature token flying onto the battlefield. This includes opponents' turns, so while you not likely
we have life.
We have some life link, we have some life gain stuff, but
Face
most
feathers.
likely
Yeah.
it's only in your turn, and you do have to jump through some hoops, because well, if you play it on curve like turn 4, probably you don't have 4 permanents under your opponent's control and have Zedruu. But later on in the game, it can be really strong.
It's a late game thing. It's not an aggressive. It's more of a consistent engine for later in the game. Stormgeist is next for 5 mana. It's a XX flying spirit. This guy's power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. So usually it's going to be at least 7. And whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw a card. So of course we're going to be drawing even more cards to keep our hands nice and filled. And of course a 7/7 in the air can end games really fast.
Yeah, really, really fast. Then we have Storm Surge Kraken for 5 mana. It's a 5/5 with hexproof. But it also has Lieutenant, which means that if you control your commander, besides this creature of course, this one gets +2/+2, and when it becomes blocked, you draw 2 cards. So they shouldn't block it anymore, but if they don't block it, they're gonna have 7 damage in their face.
Yeah, so if a 7/7 flyer ends games quickly, this guy will end games just as quickly.
Yeah.
Next we have Psychosis Crawler for 5 mana. It's a XX horror, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your hand. So once again, this guy is going to be chunky. But more importantly even, is that whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. Alright, so now if we're drawing 4 or 5 cards a turn, everybody is losing 4 or 5 life a turn. And that also is going to win you the game.
True. Then we have Rite of the Raging Storm. For 5 mana it's an enchantment. And it says that creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. And also at the beginning of each player's end step, so that upkeep, that includes you and all other opponents of course. That player puts a 5/1 red elemental creature token onto the battlefield named Lightning Rager. So this creature can't attack you if you control this enchantment. And that creature has trample and haste, and they have to sacrifice at the end of turn. So basically, you're going to have a 5/1 Trampler with haste for each opponent and for yourself that can attack anybody except for you. So they're going to kill each other, but not you.
Yeah, very, very strong. Don't give this one away.
No.
Keep this one. This is the one gift you really want to keep for yourself. Then we have Felidar Sovereign for 6 mana. It's a 4/6 cat beast with vigilance and lifelink. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 4 or more life, you win the game. Okay. This is one of the least fun cards to play, but in this kind of a deck where all you're doing is passively giving away gifts, gaining life and drawing cards, you're not in the position to be dealing a lot of damage through combat. And this is one of those few ways that you can say, okay, this is kind of a passive deck, we're going to win this way. And it is very realistic that Zedruu can get above that 40 life because it's commander anyway, and we're gaining a lot of life anywho.
If the game goes on long enough, you are not killing anybody, nobody can do anything anymore, so they don't have to scoop, you just play this card.
And then start a new game.
Then we have Medomai the Ageless. For 6 mana, it's a 4/4 flying swings, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you can take an additional turn after this one. So you gain life again, you draw cards again, really nasty. But Medomai the Ageless can't attack during extra turns. Well, of course, because then you can just get extra turns indefinitely.
Exactly, and we have a video about getting infinite turns.
From this one.
Put the link in there. But it's not in this deck. So the next one is Stormtide Leviathan. For 8 mana, we get an 8/8 Island Walk. And all lands are islands in addition to their other types. And creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. So this is a nice little card which not only ends the games, because of course it's an 8/8 unblockable, but also kind of that protection, kind of that sphere of safety kind of an idea that people can't really attack you very well. Because Stormtide Leviathan is making sure that you need to have either flying or island walk.
Yeah, there won't be a lot of island walk, so basically only flyers can attack. Yeah. And this one with unblockable.
So as usual, we can have all the win conditions we want, but we need the mana to cast it. So let's have a look at the lands.
So we divided the lands into 6 plains, 6 islands, 5 mountains, and 23 non-basic lands. So let's take a look at the non-basic lands. The first one is Care Keep. It's a legendary land. It adds 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, but it also has an other ability. For 2 mana, of which 1 red, you can tap it and put a 0/1 red kobold creature named Kobolds of Care Keep onto the battlefield, which you can give away.
Yeah. Then a very similar card as well is Springjack Pasture. It also taps for a colorless, and also we can pay 4 mana tap it to get a 0/1 white goat creature token onto the battlefield. So we got 2 ways to get those goats now. And we can also tap it and then sacrifice X goats to add X mana of any color, any 1 color to our mana pool and gain X life. We're not going to be using that much because we're going to pretty much be giving away those 0/1 goats anyway.
Yeah, it's too expensive to just use this, I think. Azorius Chancery is the next one. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand. Could be a tap land, should be I think. And then this card gives 2 mana, a white and a blue mana, which is really, really nice. It's actually a ramp, it's actually an additional land. It's 2 lands in 1.
Yeah. And it's exactly the same as Boros Garrison, but in this case it's going to give you both a red and a white, and it's the same as Is It Boiler Works, which is exactly the same, except this one's going to give you both blue and red at the same time.
Then we have Mystic Monastery. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it can give you any of the 3 colors you need, blue, red and white.
Pretty perfect. Then we go to the Guild Gates. This is the Azorius Guild Gate, and it comes in tapped, but it gives you either white or blue.
Which is the same as Tranquil Cove, only this one, when it enters, gives you 1 life.
And then, which is exactly the same as Meandering River, except this one's actually the same as the Guild Gate. It doesn't even give you the life.
That's true.
Cheap.
Then we have Boros Guild Gate. It enters tapped, gives you red or white. It's the same as Stone Quarry.
And we also have Windscarred Crag, which gives you the life.
Then we have Is It Guild Gate and Highland Lake. They both enter tapped and give you blue or red.
Yeah, and then we have Swiftwater Cliffs, same, gives you the life. Not too bad.
The Rupture Spire and Trans Guild Promenade. They enter the battlefield tapped, but when they enter you have to pay 1 life unless you sacrifice it, which is pretty lame to do. And then it gives you 1 mana of any color.
Yeah, same as Trans Guild Promenade, which is actually exactly the same.
Yeah. Then we have Temple of the False God. It gives you 2 mana, colorless mana, but you can only activate it if you control 5 or more lands.
Okay, I want a cool land now. Alright, good. I got a good one. I got Vivid Meadow, Vivid Creek, and Vivid Crag. They all come in tapped, but they do come in with 2 charge counters, which means that the Meadow gives you white, the Creek gives you blue, and the Crag gives you red, but on 2 occasions we can tap it and put a charge counter, take the charge counter off it, and it gives you mana of any color.
And the last 2, the Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. When you tap them and sacrifice them, you get to search your library for a basic land card of any color and put it onto the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, pretty sweet. Those are all the lands. Let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. The great thing about Zedruu is you're playing such a unique deck. You're giving away stuff that's either useless or annoying to your opponents, and that is something that people are usually not used to. On top of that, you're actually drawing a ton of cards and gaining life the whole time, so that's exactly what you want to be doing in EDH. You got your control, you can destroy individual targets, you can do board wipes, you have your win conditions, you get everything you need to make sure that in the long run, you win the game. This deck is not fast, and don't expect to win this game soon, but at the end of the day, you should be the one victorious at the end of the battlefield. Ruud, what do you think?
It's really made for playing in a multiplayer setting, of course, so you can take the most aggressive or strongest player at that time, put them down a notch or 2.
Yeah.
This is really important, so you help the other players against the strongest player. It's a political deck. Don't expect to, of course, be a really, really strong deck. It's really meant to just keep on playing for the long run and win in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. You're not aggressive. You're not dealing tons of damage. But we did put in a couple of win conditions in there, so you're not just gaining life and drawing cards the whole game. You really do have a way to win.
You really need some time to build your deck.
Absolutely. And you don't want to be playing against somebody who can just sacrifice all their own permanents, because that is kind of annoying with this deck. But to mitigate that, also remember that the deck list is in the description below. And it's also quite affordable, isn't it?
Yeah. The whole deck, that's including lands and the commander, is $32. We did the math on magiccards.info, so we used on the medium price, so you can really buy this deck for $32.
Absolutely. Now, don't forget to subscribe to get the most powerful decks and advice anyone can afford. Also, join us on Facebook and Twitter. You can ask us questions there. We can have discussions. Just join us right there at Budget MTG Decks. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
And this was Budget MTG Decks.